Okay, we're back. Happy New Year! Today we're going to be talking all about water energetics and a little bit about what to expect in the energetics of this new year, 2026. How's it been feeling so far for everyone? January to me always feels like this in-between space because technically the new year doesn't start until astrological new year, which is spring equinox and Aries season. But some people also celebrate Chinese Lunar New Year, which is mid-February. This year it's February 17th, which starts spring eclipse season, which is big energetic shifts. It's sort of like changing the chapter normally, but I think this year it feels like changing to a whole new book. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, January, we're still in this year of the wood snake and we're like at the tail end of it. And if you've ever watched a snake move, there's a lot of whips there at the tail end. There's a lot of movement there at the tail end of a snake. And, this snake year has seen us shedding a lot of releasing, and so much surrender. And so, even though we're kind of at the end of it here, at the end of January, there's still that little bit. What do we have, like 10 days if we're releasing this on the 27th of January. We still have until February 17th of this wood snake tail. So just be mindful about what's whipping around back here because it deserves our attention and not just skipping over it. And so, January has been a lot about, well, hold on here. I want to come into the space a little bit and land. We're going to get some practice with, kind of coming still and present in the moment because we're going to need it this year. So we'll just take a couple minutes here. If you feel good about it, you can close your eyes. If you don't want to close your eyes, you can keep them open and soft. And we're just going to kind of come down into our bodies. We're going to let the hustle and bustle of the outside world kind of dim and fade out. And we're going to become more aware of our inner world. Kind of coming down out of our heads into the back of our sinuses, the back of our throats, down through our neck, feeling into how it feels in our shoulders and upper chest, feeling how it feels to fill our lungs and to empty our lungs. Letting our hips relax, our belly tension relax, our thighs and knees feel easy and held in our chairs. Letting our toes relax and our ankles feel smooth. And we're going to come back into the space just below our belly button. Back down into our pelvic bowl, about 2 finger widths below that belly button, and just as deep into our bellies. We're going to breathe into this space here. This is what we call in Chinese medicine the DanTian. It's also a shared space with the sacral chakra, the second chakra. And just feeling how this space feels. Does it feel tense? Does it feel cold? Does it feel hot? Does it feel empty? Just noticing how it feels in here. This is the realm in our bodies that we are speaking about today. This is the realm of the water element. It's where the lower fire lives, the pilot light, as my teacher Lori calls it. lives. It's the source of our deep knowing. And it's the deep yin energetics that sort of hum our physical being into existence. It's the place that holds our blueprint, the place that holds our divine mandate, who we are meant to be here. And it gets ignored a lot. So we're just going to spend some time here just kind of breathing in, just for a few more seconds, just noticing how it feels in this space. Landing into these energetics so that we're more present with what we're going to be talking about today. All right, when you feel ready, come back into the space. Wiggle your toes, blink your eyes a few times, shake it out if it feels good. All right, I hope that helps everybody kind of come in. Water energetics are a lot about this sort of rooted stillness that we find deep in our depths. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the overall energetics about 2026. Nothing major, but or I'm not going to be talking about anything like hardcore or major. This is a very major, massive energy shift year for a whole bunch of reasons. But I'm just going to do a quick little how do you do, especially about things that we want to keep in mind as we move in this year. We're going to be talking about the importance of balancing this massive momentum that we're going to come into with still presence. It's going to be really important to balance this energy as best we can. So after we come out of general energetics of 2026, we're going to talk about water season resonances. So we'll go into our seasonal guide that we offer each season and kind of, get a little bit more into the nuts and bolts of those resonances. Not only because it's water season for a couple more months, but also it's going to be, again, really important to kind of bring these energetics with us this year. It's always important to be present and create space for this part of our energetic anatomy and this part of, this natural energetic, but this year especially, it's going to be really important. So we're going to spend some time with the water resonances. We're going to go into a discussion about Jing, which translates to essence. It's this intelligent fluid that governs our innate self-healing, self-regulating, self-harmony abilities, but it also holds our blueprint, sort of the seeds of who we are. And so that's going to be really important to be mindful of and to work with and support as we move into this year, which is going to be about intentionally creating new and, authentically creating new. We're also going to talk about some different ways to support the water energetics and the water element within us. Yeah, we've got lots of fun stuff to talk about. It's going to be a lot again. I don't do I don't do light conversation. I'm not great at small talk. It makes me feel funny. So we're going to get into it. But first, I just wanted to come back in with our reminder again that these are, multi-dimensional topics. They move in many different directions, many different realms of existence, and especially these lower, more yin energetics like water. They sort of exist just on the edge of or really outside of our conscious awareness. So don't worry about getting it, whatever that means. I've been in this been in this medicine for almost 2 decades and I still don't really get it. I get the gist of it and I can watch it play out in myself and in my patients and clients and in nature. But, this is we're talking about the unknowable here. And so just let it land. It doesn't, these energetics don't need you to get it in order for them to continue to work their magic and to govern, the parts of life that they govern. But they do deserve and love your attention and your care. And so that's why we're talking about them. So let the information just kind of roll on in, let it wash over you, and, come back to this episode as many times as you feel like you need to. Let it kind of marinate. Come back in, sit with it some more. It's always here for you. And mostly just trust that what lands is exactly what you need in this moment. All right, so we'll get into it. On to the energetics of 2026. Now, there is so much happening here. So much already happening in January, a shit ton happening in February. And really, it's a fast year. We're going to be, at Lunar New Year, February 17th, we're going to be moving into the year of the Fire Horse. Both things move fast. Both have very forward, directional, upward, outward movement, and at the end of the day, there's a lot of astrologers making predictions and things like that. We don't know what's going to happen. We've never been here before, ever. There's, certain astrological transits and movements that have happened historically before, but not like this altogether. And the last time that we've seen a lot of these was, almost 6,500 years ago, 6,500 years ago. So, but some of the smaller transits that we're seeing also have happened in recorded history during times that we saw massive movement in human evolution. And so we know this is going to be a thing this year. We have massive evolution happening in almost every facet of our existence right now, this year. So it's a big one. There's a lot going on. And so even just kind of that brief little snippet there, you can feel how it's going to be vital to come back into stillness and presence and to be centered, in our uprightness with ourselves, in integrity with our souls. So a note that I made about kind of the vibes of 2026, trusting the chaos of becoming and heart-centered, intentional creation of the new. And so January has kind of seen us, it may have felt a little bit like a slow start. To me, it kind of feels like a little bit of some puttering, like there's some forward rushes and then some kind of backward, some forward, some backward, some wrapping up of some of the stuff that was lingering from 2025. And that's really what January is all about. It's about an intentional kind of integration, processing, metabolizing moment. And that's definitely what we're doing. It's kind of, like I was saying, those last little whips of the snake tail, we're tying up these loose ends before it's go time. So that's kind of what we've been doing here in January. The past few years have been a lot of water and earth energy. So it's been a lot of, what happens when you have water and earth? Mud, right? So it's felt kind of depressing. It's felt kind of like I'm doing all these things and not getting anywhere. I'm spinning my wheels, but not getting anywhere. And there's been a lot of like inner work, inner introspection, and we've had a lot of lessons around how to slow down and how to be present. And sometimes those lessons have been really challenging, but that's been what they're in service to, is to help us learn to be slow and intentional and steady and discerning. Because, as we move closer into Aries season, it's going to be like a rocket ship went off. So anyway, moving closer into February and Imbolc, which is around the 1st of February. Imbolc is a Gaelic word that literally means in belly. The things that that are being gestated in this water season, in this little first nudge into the new year, those, what's being gestated here, the seeds of the new for each of us and the collective are going to start to become clearer and clearer, as will possible next steps. So, just kind of be mindful of those, still be very still and present. No need to run yet. You'll feel it when it's go time. And then, as we get closer into spring, into Aries season around the equinox, it will feel like full on go time. If January was ready, February is get set, March is go. And it's going to feel that way. And this is, like time is very fluid. It's not like a linear, specific thing. You'll feel, and the whole reason that we're talking about all of this is so that you start to or deepen your awareness, your feeling of the way that the energetics are moving and pulling you. But you're definitely going to feel it. We're going to feel it like a spark of ignition as we get closer into spring equinox, with that massive momentum kind of coming in and forward movement, new becoming, and really, feeling that spark as like a support, feeling ourselves being held in the energetics of it, because it's going to be real easy to kind of get swept off our feet. And so, on that note, while there is going to be massive momentum, incredible potential, like physical creation energy happening this year, because we're moving into a lot of, or really all, fire and air. All the planets are going to be in fire and air signs instead of those earth and water signs. And so, that's fast. Fire and air move very quickly. Things shift and go very quickly. And so with that, again, it's going to be very important to balance that fiery air, massive forward movement with stillness and presence, and kind of coming into ourselves and rooting in. And, in order to kind of ensure that we are creating this, whatever it is that we're creating, new bits of ourselves, newness in our careers, newness in our families, whatever it is, it's going to be everything all at once, potentially. In order to ensure that we stay aligned and in integrity with our souls, we need to cultivate this ability to come into still presence before we move, and while we're moving, and after we move. It's going to be so important to kind of come back into that, to intentionally make space for and connect with this intelligence that's weaving its way in and through the unknown. It's going to be really important. We spent a lot of time in metal season talking about getting comfortable with the unknown, and that is still very important. There's an unfolding that's happening here. Source, God, universe, creator, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, is up to something big here. Humanity is up to something big here. We are in an evolutionary process. There is this divine, intelligent thread sort of humming underneath all of the fast momentum. And it's imperative, in my opinion, to make space to connect with and listen to the wisdom that's coming from that space, listening for it, and honor what comes through there, because that's how we're going to be creating from, the space of aligned integrity and the most resourced support, so that we're not just, like running and pushing and burning out, because it's going to be very easy to do that. And so, yes, that's good there. Another thing that's going to be happening this year is a lot of our subtle or psychic senses are going to be heightening. They're going to become more attuned, sharper, more keen. And we want to lean into these subtle senses, because again, this is where we connect with that intelligent thread that's weaving its way through everything here. And so we want to lean into those senses, pay attention to, like Are you hearing things in a different way, at a different level? Smells, even. Sight, that different sight that we've spent a lot of time talking about. Knowing, feeling, sensing. All of our subtle senses are going to become more and more heightened as we progress going forward. But this is going to really start, or maybe has already started for you. It's going to be a thing this year, so you want to lean into it. The ones that are most pulling your attention are the ones that are most active in each moment, and asking for your presence and attention. They may not even be asking anything from you, but it's good to make space so that you can hear if they are. So we're going to want to lean into those subtle senses. Discernment is going to continue to be a thing. We need to really continue to cultivate that muscle as this dance between authenticity, integrity, truth, and their opposites continues and probably intensifies. Probably already is intensifying. Discernment is a whole huge thing. And you have this inbuilt anatomy, these inbuilt, innate, subtle senses that let you know the difference and move accordingly. Another thing that is going to be important here is intentionally anchoring into our heart centers and that lower DanTian, that lower embodied place of deep inner knowing that we connected with at the beginning of this episode. Connecting with those spaces regularly and consistently is going to be important as well, because that's what keeps us upright and in integrity with ourselves and our divine mandate, the reason that we're here, our usness. It's also going to help us learn how to be present and move with the conflict that is inevitably going to come up this year. It already is on a collective level and probably on a personal level. It is going to come up. And you want to, and conflict is important when we're talking about evolution. There's an individuation process that's happening here. It's important that that happens. But when it happens, it's in service to us learning how we want to be with it, how we want to show up in it. How can we stay in union and connection without dimming ourselves, without losing ourselves. So it's going to be really important, again, to kind of connect into that heart space and into that lower DanTian wise realm down there. And I have a video on Instagram called the Heart Meditation. So you have now on Instagram this heart meditation that helps you connect with your heart center and create coherence from there. And now we have this lower DanTian quick meditation to help us connect into our embodiment, our embodied being, and our deep inner wisdom there. So please be sure to go check that out. My handle is at Dr. Heather Jones over on Instagram. Okay. And so, basically we're going to be learning to feel the difference between the big unknown, this collective evolution that's happening, and also this deep, subtle inner knowing that's guiding us step by step all along the way of this evolution. So this big unknown that's coming from the all that is, that thread that's weaving the new, that we are meant to deeply listen for and honor and make space for the guidance that's there, but also connect into our own inner wisdom. And the same kind of trust is required for honoring both. And so just making space for that. I want you to remember this quote. This is going to be a juicy one all year, but especially throughout this episode. I'm going to read this quote, and we're just going to let it wash over us and land however it's going to land. When a complex system is far from equilibrium, small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos have the capacity to shift the entire system into a higher order. And that is from chemist and Nobel laureate Ilya Prigogine. He's a brilliant kind of energetics guy. But I want you to remember this quote. I mean, you can already feel, I'm sure, how important this is for ourselves and our cells that we are, building anew all day, every day. But also for, we're the little islands of coherence in our family systems, in our friend systems, in our little corners of the world. And we, with our coherence, with this, dedication to connecting with and embodying our heart's wisdom and our deep inner knowing, we have the ability to affect those of us around us, for good or for bad. But in a coherent state, one that nourishes life and supports life, we are infinitely more potent and powerful. So there's that quote. We will come back to it today, but I wanted to share that here. I love that quote so much. Okay, so we're going to come into the water season resonance now. And before we get into the nuts and bolts of that, I wanted to share another image. Pay attention to these areas here. How there's this central current here and these eddies kind of swirling off on their own, outside of, but still connected to this central current. This is the Chinese radical, or the character for water, Shui. And this is the brushstroke modern character for it. And you can see, again, this central current, this central pillar, and the, kind of swirling eddies coming off the side here. This is sort of the evolution of this character. And even in the most ancient the Oracle bone script, you still see all throughout these different iterations of this character, you still see this central current, holding things together, from which these eddies are swirling and going out into the world. And so that felt important to share, because that's water's energy. That's the energetic of water. It's this deep central steadfastness that keeps us anchored into who we are and what we're doing here, while also moving and evolving and shifting and changing and going out into the world and doing all the things, but also staying connected with this usness at our core in that lower realm that we visited earlier. So I just wanted to take a minute, because something that is so incredible about pictographic language and symbols is that they really get at the energetics of things. And this water radical that I just showed you, this shui symbol, really gets at how water is. So we're coming into the water season resonances. And so this is where we kind of break down like what season everything is, all the things, the nuts and bolts. So the season of water is winter. And winter this year is technically, I guess you could say, winter solstice, which was in December 21st, all the way to spring equinox, which is March 20th. That's sort of the like linear way of looking at it. But we have come up feeling the shifts in seasons, feeling the subtle shifts, feeling the differences in the texture and the quality of the air and the way that the birds sing and the way that the light moves. And, and so you'll start to notice here, as we move closer into Imbolc and the Lunar New Year in February, the quality of winter is going to change. The feel of things is going to change. And then as we get further close to spring, it's going to change even more. And that's the thing about water. It is, the only element that changes form. It can be liquid. It can be solid, frozen. It can be gas and steam. And we know it now it can be in a fourth stage, which is more of that easy water, that kind of plasma. We'll talk more about that later. But it changes. And so it's very paradoxical in nature. Winter starts, with that kind of death, descent, dissolution kind of energy. But at some point, something happens and it starts to shift. Something pivots and new life starts to come forward. We'll talk more about that here. But the season of water is winter. The organ officials, the organ networks that are governed by water element are the kidney and bladder. And we're talking about the actual organs here and the energetic networks that they govern. So it's so much more that we're talking about here than just, filtration of substances and detoxification and urination and all of that stuff. Those are really vital for our survival, for our well-being. Yes, absolutely. And we're also talking about this sort of inherited core of who we are, as well as our spiritual evolution. More on that a different time, but for now, those are the organ officials and the organ networks that are governed by water, the kidney and bladder. The time of day that the water element is most active is during the bladder time, which is 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., and during the kidney time, which is 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. So these 2 or 4 hour blocks is when water time is. And that's when those energetics are most active and therefore most easily supported or most easily burnt through, most easily dysregulated. The emotion of water is this kind of dance between fear and courage. Fear is a very helpful and good emotion as far as keeping us, alive. It's good for our survival to have fear. But when it can't or doesn't flow freely through and out of the body, when it doesn't release from the body, it becomes frozen or paralyzing or stuck. And it can really injure the kidney and bladder energetics, can really injure our water element inside. The life phase of the water element is the seed. It's the place of the blueprint for life, the potentials of life. The color of water is this mysterious blackish, purplish blue. There's kind of a lot of debate about what color it actually is. But for me, my experience of the water element's color is this mix of all three. It's this deep, mysterious, kind of like the night sky, like the deepest, darkest part of night sky. The odor associated with the water element is putrid. So when it's imbalanced or unhealthy, it can smell like stagnant pond water or even ammonia or like stagnant urine. But when it's healthy, it smells like fresh water. It smells very fresh and alive. And the sound of water is a groan. It's sort of this like descending at the end of somebody's words. So somebody who is a water element type constitutionally is going to tend to groan off at the end of their words, especially when they're stressed or tired. And people can have that sound if their water element is out of balance, whether they're constitutionally a water type or not. The healing sound for the water element is Chui. And you can make that sound 3 to 9 times. And when you really do it, and you find the tone that resonates for you and your water element, you're going to feel it in that lower DanTian that we met earlier. You're going to feel it in your kidneys and bladder. You'll be able to feel kind of, those parts of you humming with that sound. And you'll really notice if you make that sound regularly and you have imbalances in those networks and those systems, you'll notice a shift if you do it consistently. The flavor associated with the water element is salty. So think about like seaweed, ocean water, not the beverage from a restaurant. but actual water from the ocean. It's got that salty, minerally, rich taste to it. The sense organ associated with water are the ears, and so our sense of hearing. And this is where, the difference between hearing and listening comes in. It's why I spent a lot of time in the beginning talking about listening for the inner wisdom coming up from within ourselves, but also coming from the all that is, that's whispering that intelligent guidance for how to move in these times and really cultivating that. So the ears are the sense organ associated with the water element. And the body tissue associated with the water element is bone and head hair. And that has to do with something that we'll talk about in a little bit. It's a manifestation of our Jing essence and sort of like the vitality of our being. It has a lot to do with marrow, so actual bone marrow, our spinal fluid and cord, our nervous tissue, our brain tissue. Teeth are also, they're bone, right? So they're also like an outcropping of and a way to understand how your water energy, how your kidney and bladder energy are functioning or not. The virtue of the water element is wisdom. And it's not so much about this, kind of collecting of knowledge or experiences. That's part of it. But it's more about that connection and that deep inner knowing that's, almost just outside of our consciousness. It's knowing that whatever is in the unknown is meant to be in the unknown, and trusting that what needs to be revealed or what needs to be known will be in the right time. So it's that deep inner knowing and that kind of trust in the unknown, which sounds paradoxical, but that's water. That's how it works. And it's a faith that when it's time, we have what we need and we'll know exactly how and what resources should be used or not. It's a kind of wise living of life. Okay, so wisdom is the virtue that empowers us to stand in the unknown, to wisely utilize our resources at the right time. That's the virtue of water. The mantra of water is I am. I am. The spirit of water is the zhi, the will, and it's this innate power of life itself. That's the kind of will that we're talking about. The innate power of life itself. And it's a kind of life force that wants to live and move in ways that keep it living. It's not the kind of efforting willpower that pushes against nature or obsessively drives for achievement. It's the zhi, or the will, works independently of a person's consciousness or volition. It's a force that moves us toward our destiny, our divine mandate, without much of our conscious effort or thought. Ted Kapchuk, who wrote a book called The Web That Has No Weaver. If you've been to acupuncture school recently, this was a required text or a required reading for you. If you haven't and you're curious about Chinese medicine, it's a really cool place to start. It is thick, but so is Chinese medicine. It's millennia, thousands of years of information. So anyway, Ted Kapchuk says about the jur, it's the will that can't be willed. It's the power of the yin mother to bring new life, to build and to birth new form, new matter, to make something matter, form, physicality out of nothing, energy or light. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about the water energetics. It's a big, huge thing and has been kind of relegated to the outskirts and minimalized and made into something scary for too long. So water is the end and the beginning. It's that paradox that we talked about. It's the end and the beginning. Water energy is probably, if not the most paradoxical energy of all the 5 elements. They all kind of have their own paradox within them, but water just sort of inherently has that. Like I was saying earlier, it begins with the energy moving down and in. The seeds have descended down into the depths where they cannot be seen, and their status is unknown to us. We don't know what they're doing, if they're doing. All while those seeds are carrying the blueprint for life within themselves, sequestered in a kind of gestational compression in the winter until these deep yin energies have kind of reached their fullest maximum, their most extreme. And then somehow from that extreme stillness, a spark of yang emerges from within the yin, emerges from within itself. Spontaneously, and life begins anew. The seed begins to pulse and unfurl towards its potentials, moving steadily in its will to be. Water holds the blueprint and builds it into form, containing, maintaining, and preserving the life as it walks on its path and embodies its divine mandate. As my teacher Lori says, water is the pilot light energy that powers a life from beginning to end. It's that pilot light. It's the fire within water that comes from below, that comes from within an embodied being. So that's what we're talking about here. It's big, big stuff. I'm going to share some questions to get in touch and feel into your water element on our water season guide that can be found on Instagram. So pop on over there to check that out for more ways to connect with and get to know your water element. But yeah, it's about this dance between stillness and receptivity and movement and activity. And mostly it's about that wisdom, that deep inner knowing that's required for the appropriate utilization and conservation of my resources, of your resources. Knowing the difference between when it's time to rest and time to move, and having the ability to engage with both types of energetics within ourselves when we need to. It gives us this rooted resilience and capacity to sit with the unknown and trust in the depths of disillusion. And so you can feel how these water energetics are going to be very important for this year and going forward. And we tend to very easily burn them out, these energetics. We tend to burn the candle at both ends, which really depletes our water element. We tend to be a very yangy, production-focused upward, outward, yang-y people. And because of that, we are unrooted. We have lost connection with our usness, our unique usness and our collective soul being. And that's not good. And it's going to, I think it already has for a lot of us, required us to come back in and at the very least to balance this very fiery, airy, quick, lots of momentum year coming with this rooted, stable, central current that exists always within us. It's going to ask us to come back to it. So and I just want to say, I wasn't planning to talk about this, but it's coming through right now. So I'm going to honor that because it's going to make my throat feel funny if I don't. There's a part of this that you may have already kind of picked up on as we've talked about the water energetics, but there's a really important piece to this that I think has been playing up a lot in the last few years and a lot in these last moments of this wood snake year. And it's this stuff around safety and feeling resourced. What makes me feel safe and what makes me feel resourced and supported. These are all part of water energetics. I think that we have also been having a lot of insight into what doesn't make us feel safe and what depletes us and makes us feel unresourced and unsupported. So that just wanted to come through just to have some awareness for us that those themes have been playing, these watery themes of safety and being resourced and supported have been coming through. And in order to feel safe and resourced and be able to successfully and potently create and produce from fertile ground, to be able to birth this new, we're going to want to tend to the things that make us feel safe and help us feel resourced within ourselves. So, wasn't planning on that, but that one just came through. So, here we go. So, some imbalances or some ways that water can present itself as unwell are going to be paradoxical in themselves as well. So, imbalanced water can look like agitation and or paralysis. It used to be in ancient times that somebody would show with like more yang deficient kind of collapse, paralysis, freeze symptoms, or more yin deficient agitation, irritation, heat symptoms. But most of us nowadays have both. And so it's usually and both here with these. So it can look like agitation and paralysis or paralysis. It can look like hyperactivity and or exhaustion. It can look like sort of adrenaline-driven will, kind of that pushing and pushing and forcing and burning it at both ends and go, go, go. Don't even get me started on that. As a recovering one of those, don't get me started. It can look like excess or lack of ambition. It can look like fear of not having enough. It can look like being very power-driven or being impotent in all kinds of ways. It can look like drought, dryness. It can look like flood, swelling, edema, puffiness. And it can look like stagnancy, stuck, frozen. So those are just, I could go for literally years, I think, about what a water imbalance can look like, but that's kind of a quick gist that's appropriate for where we're at today. Then since we talked about things that, the way that water imbalance can look inside of us, here are just a few ways that water can be injured or depleted. And we've kind of talked about some of these before. So fear that doesn't flow freely and release from the body injures the water element. It injures the kidney and bladder systems. chronic chronic fearfulness injures the water element. Trauma injures water. Ongoing stress, so think about like adrenal fatigue. Penetrating cold, which can also be a symptom of water imbalance, specifically the yang aspect of water, that warming aspect. If that's deficient, we have cold hands and feet. We feel cold all the time. We're easily affected by cold. This whole thing about wearing cropped tops is very injurious to this water element, to this kidney and bladder energy. Addictions injure water energy, and insufficient sleep and overwork. So again, a lot of things that are going to be causing us to be in overdrive, to be burning the candle from both ends, is going to injure the water element. Okay, so you have probably gathered by now that when we're talking about the water element in Chinese medicine, there's an implication of this special kind of intelligence. And we know now through, again, the work of Dr. Emoto, through Veda Austin, through Gerald Pollack and his book, The Fourth Phase of Water. If you haven't checked that out and you have an interest in the intelligence of water, please check his work out. It's brilliant. Through people like that, we know that water holds intelligence. It holds information. And it has its own innate intelligence, its own consciousness. So when we're talking about the water element within ourselves, this implication of intelligence, knowing, is there. It's part of the conversation. Earlier, I mentioned this concept of Jing, or essence. Jing is the Chinese word for essence. And this Jing essence is this intelligent fluid that's governed by the water element and stored in the kidney system. It's this liquid intelligence that guides, supports, and sustains our body's innate self-healing, self-regulating, and self-harmonizing processes, potentials, capacities, as well as our spiritual evolutionary processes. So it's deeply about our embodied well-being and also the well-being of our souls, and the growth and development of our bodies and the growth and development of our souls. According to TCM scholar Leon Hammer, this is the inherited energies that unite past, present, and future, and bind all three in an individual person to the cosmic forces, to the secrets and mysteries of the universe. Jing is a big deal. And it's the fuel for our physical and spiritual life. And while some of our Jing is made up of the food we eat, the breath we take in, the chi and energy that we put into, onto, and around our bodies, most of our Jing is inherited from our this lifetime DNA lineages, our ancestors in this lifetime. And I believe that it also is derived from what I call our spiritual ancestry, our soul's lineages and the lives our soul has lived. That inherited wisdom, those traits and abilities that we've cultivated over lifetimes, as well as the patterns and karma that we have collected throughout our lifetimes. That's all held in the Jing. Jing is this structured, coherent, living, intelligent fluid that moves in and through all of our organs, our vessels, our tissues, and our cells. It permeates our entire physical being with the wisdom, nourishment, and fuel to perform all of the autonomic or automatic functions and the self-healing abilities that are innate in all of our bodies. Inside of Jing, as I've mentioned before, is held our divine mandate, our highest, most authentic expression, and the blueprint of our greatest development and potential. It holds, carries, and infuses this Jing into all of our physicality with the seeds of our unique usness. It infuses us. Our Jing infuses us with the seeds of who we are. And it moves in all of the fluids in our bodies. So think about that. Think about what's pumping in your blood every second, however many seconds a day, what's constantly moving in your interstitial fluid, in your plasma. Every single bit of fluid in your body holds this Jing, which is carrying and infusing your being with your you-ness and the fuel to embody that. It's such a beautiful thing. And so in energetics, like seeks like. It's those resonances. It's like the guitar strings, all the A guitars and all the guitars in a room. If you pluck one A guitar string on one guitar, all of those A strings are going to start humming inside that room. That's resonance. So like seeks like. So this liquid, intelligent, structured Jing fluid that nourishes all of our life processes is similar to drinking structured water and how drinking structured water enhances our cellular hydration, our energetic and or electrical conductivity, and our body's coherence, how chaotic or stressful or at ease it moves in the world. Structured water is alive, intelligent, and helps our bodies work better. You know, because our bodies are at least 70% water, right? So most of the water that we consume now is dead water. It's been heavily processed, chemically treated, held stagnant, and is no longer coherent, meaning it moves in chaotic waves that are actually antithetical to life. They are detrimental to life force energy. They tax our cellular processes. And when we drink a lot of this dead water, we become more dehydrated. Minerals are stripped from our cells. That electrical conductivity that fires all the processes in our being suffers. And so, why are we doing that? Why are we drinking dead water? And there's a whole bunch of reasons why I could go into that. That's a whole huge rabbit hole. But basically, we want to kind of come back as much as we can to the structured water, because I feel that this structured water, drinking structured water, is going to support our Jing, and our Jing needs all the support that we can get. As we've talked about, you know, this energetic within us is significantly tired and burnt out and depleted in everybody just because of the way that we live our lives and the, constant external stimulation and the EMF radiation and the toxins that are everywhere and all the things. It depletes our reserves. It depletes our Jing. And so structured water is something that's very helpful in enlivening our being and ourselves and our cells and kind of supporting this Jing. So living water becomes structured or coherent, intelligent, and informed by nature as it flows and swirls over the rocks and through rivers and oceans and seas. It collects minerals that help activate cellular processes and things like that. It's invigorated and enlivened through that movement. And, most of us now don't have direct access to good sources of pure spring water. Yes, we can go buy some that's bottled, that's whatever it is, but most of us don't have direct access to a tap from a spring. And so we want to be thinking about ways that we can restructure our water. And there are lots of tools. I'm sure you've seen them. Structured water is a whole huge topic and has been for a few years, but there's lots of tools that you can use to buy to restructure your water. I like the Analima ones and the inserts that they have to put into your water filter, but those can be pricey and expensive. And, not everybody has access to that. And so I came across a really cool post on the Weston Price Foundation's Instagram from Dr. Andy Kaufman. And he was talking about a super easy way and very affordable way to structure your water. All you need is water. Ideally, we want it to be, clean and filtered and free of toxins and chemicals as much as possible. Sunlight, which is everywhere, even in the wintertime. And a hydrophilic surface, so a surface that loves water. And the way that you can tell if a surface is hydrophilic is that when you put a drop of water onto it, it spreads out instead of staying balled up. And so there are several species of wood that are hydrophilic. They love water, including cedar, poplar, and eucalyptus. And so guess what? You can just find some untreated, chemical-free cedar chips very easily, very inexpensively, and pop one of those chips into your water and have it be out in the sunshine for a little bit, and it's structured, living water. And I promise you, it might sound nuts if you've never played with this before, but structured water is very different than unstructured water. It feels fresher. It feels more hydrating. I have a very hard time drinking water if it's not structured, and I didn't realize that. I just thought that I just had a hard time drinking water. But when it's structured, when I have structured drinking water, I drink a lot more of it, and I don't even think about it. And so you can tell a difference. And doing it over time, you start to notice less inflammation, more energy, less brain fog, less body pain. There's so many things that can happen from structuring your water. And with something as simple as that, those three things, water, sunlight, and a cedar chip, why not give it a go? And so again, we'll share the link in the show notes to that video from Dr. Andy Kaufman, sharing that exercise if you'd like it. But I just wanted to mention again this idea of coherence and our quote from the beginning. So I'm going to read it again to us. A complex system is far from equilibrium. Small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos have the capacity to shift the entire system into a higher order. That's again from Ilya Prigogine. And so if you want to, we're already a long episode. It's too much to talk about the ins and outs of coherence. So if you want to visit that, I have a post about heart coherence on Instagram from this summer of 2025. And so we'll link that below as well if you want to learn more about coherence. Coming back to that quote, the more steadied and supported and coherent we are within ourselves, the more our creations will be steadied and centered as well. And the more our little parts of the world will be, the more it ripples, right? Coming into the water analogies, what we do ripples out all around us. And so if we can create more coherence and stability for ourselves, that helps create that in our world. So, some quick mentions of ways to support the water element through food. We talked about the salty flavor. So thinking about seaweeds, sea salt, miso, tamari, things like that. The salty flavor is very important for the water element and for kidney and bladder health, but it's also important to keep in mind that balance is important. And if we consume too much, for us, salt, it can injure the grandchild of the water element, which is the fire element, which is the heart. And so while it is very important to have enough sodium intake, you want to keep it balanced and kind of feel for it within yourself. Some more foods that nourish the water element, coming back to resonances and the color of the water element. Foods that are this color, this blackish, bluish, purplish color, the deep dark colors, those are going to be resonant with the water element, resonant with the kidney and bladder systems, and then therefore supportive to it. So blackberries, blueberries, black grapes, black currants, plums, figs, prunes, black beans. Black beans and kidney beans both are nourishing to the water element, and that's more of like the doctrine of signatures. They look like tiny little kidneys. And black sesame seeds are incredibly nourishing for the water element. And walnuts are as well because of their resonance with the brain. Walnuts look like brains, right? And the brain is the sea of marrow, which is related to or an outcropping of the water element. So, and then for a few more ways to support the water element and support your body through water season and throughout the entire year, because we've said we want to come back to these energetics and nourish and support them. I have a 5 ways to prep for water season post on Instagram that is full of quick and easy, but very potent ways to support the water element. All right. So now I wanted to talk about acupoints to support and activate the water element. Okay, so we're going to get into this acupuncture point that beautifully supports the water element. It's on the bladder meridian, which I think we've talked about before, but the bladder meridian is the longest meridian on the body. It starts on the inner corner of the eye and zigzags up and down the spine. There's two strips of it that go along the back. It goes down the back of the leg and ends on the outside of the pinky toe. It's a very long meridian, and for a whole bunch of good reasons that we don't have time to go into today. But this particular point I love so much because of how supportive to this paradoxical nature of the water element it is. The point's name is Kunlun, or Kunlun Mountain, which in ancient Taoist tradition, Kunlun Mountain was considered the soul mountain. It was kind of a reflection of our journey and our beingness and our psyches. That's also a whole huge conversation for a different day. But you can find bladder 60 or Kunlun on the outside of the ankle, just behind the prominence of that lateral malleolus, that ankle bone, in between that sort of gap in the tissue between the lateral malleolus and the Achilles tendon. You'll feel it. There's a depression there, back behind that prominence of the malleolus. And, it's a big point. And so thinking of the energetics of a mountain, the sacred soul mountain, that is Kunlun Mountain, we can kind of start to feel into the energetics of this point. A mountain is very stable and prominent, and there's a lot going on around it. So this point, like I said, activates and stabilizes. And I love what my teacher, Lori Deshar, said in her book, The 5 Spirits, about this point, and about the mountain. She says, the mountain is the connecting link between our body, spirit, mind, and soul. It's the vertical axis of our being, the spinal column, and the pillar that stands between heaven and earth and above and below. In her book, Kigo, she says, The mountain symbolizes the stabilized wholeness of the self, our capacity for reflective, restful tranquility, and determined, effective movement when the time is right. So to me, Kunlun, this point, embodies that Shui character that we saw at the beginning with the central current, that central axis, that central pillar that's always there with all of this movement and changing and shifting going on all around it. It's our ability to stay centered and stable amongst all of that, connected to the above and below, the within and the without. And this point activates that capacity within ourselves. It is the great stabilizer point, and it can help us root and center and ground in. And also it can help activate and move us as well. So again, we're talking about that paradoxical nature of the water element. And this point kind of activates this energy of, it helps support and lubricate and nourish the spinal column physically, but also psychologically. It helps to give us a backbone. It helps to support and bolster our backbone so that we can, engage our courage and resources well, feeling safe and well resourced as we go out and engage and create this new that's coming in. So that's Kunlun, or Kunlun Mountain Bladder 60. I use this point very, very often. It's something that helps ground and stabilize me, but I also use it a lot in my clients and patients, because all of us, who doesn't have some adrenal fatigue? Who isn't tired and wired at the same time? It's a very important point, and you can, gently massage it with your fingers. You can have your partner gently massage it with their fingers. But a favorite way to activate this point, if I'm not using needles, which we're not doing today, is with this, I call it Shui Love, Water Love blend that I have of essential oils and a flower essence. And so, we talked a little before about how this water element has, a yang side, that activating, moving side, and a yin side, the stillness kind of side. And so the amounts of these oils that you're going to use is going to depend on your flavor of how your water element is. It's depending. And if you don't want to think about that, that's okay. Just follow these instructions. I tested the number of drops that we should use, and they're kind of ubiquitous for everybody. But if you have, more of a yin deficient, kind of underactive, collapsed, cold water element going on for yourself, add more of the yangy oils, and we'll talk about that here in a second. And if you have more of a yin deficient, kind of hyperactive, hyper reactive, hyper vigilant, heat aggression type of water element situation, add more of the yin nourishing oils that we'll talk about in a second. And again, the way that I have these parceled out here as far as the number of drops of each, it's very balanced. So if you don't want to think about that, just use what I've had here, because we all have a little bit of both. Okay, so coming into the ingredients of this Shui Love topical blend that we're going to use on this Bladder 60 point. You can really use it anywhere. You can use it on the bottoms of your feet. You can use it over your low back or your low abdomen. And you can use it over on top of Bladder 60 to activate it. So coming back into this blend in the ingredients, I started with the flower essence of rock rose. Rock rose is inside Rescue Remedy blend, the 5 flowers blend. It also has Star of Bethlehem that I think we've talked about before. And it's really wonderful for kind of bringing back courage and resilience. Some of the imbalances that we see with somebody that could benefit from rock rose are, kind of rigidity or over controlling, kind of hyper reactive individuals, but also It can be helpful for those who are like easily frazzled and highly sensitive and sort of lose themselves easily and their sense of selves when things get a little bit intense. So I did 10 drops of rock rose here. The next oil that I used was Northern Lights Black Spruce. I use Young Living because I've used them since 2007 and I think they're the best, but there's lots of great options out there. Their black spruce is called Northern Lights black spruce because it grows up underneath the northern lights, which I think is extra important these days with that electrical activity. We're in a solar maximum, so we're seeing a lot of solar activity, a lot of solar flares, a lot of northern lights activity in places where it oughtn't to be. And so I find this oil to be very supportive in not only like rooting and grounding and stabilizing down, but also in knowing how to be with the very active electrical energetics that are going to continue to be more and more potent this year. And I used 8 drops of this black spruce oil. It's like a mix of that enlivening and grounding, and it's sweeter than most of the conifer oils. I love black spruce oil. It's one of my favorites, actually. The next oil that I used is nutmeg, and nutmeg it's more of a yang-y oil. It's more warming and kind of activating. It has an affinity. It's very neuroprotective, and it's really great for that collapsed adrenal fatigue kind of energetic. It can be pretty cloying. So if you use too much of it, it can injure the yin side of the water element. So you want to use it sparingly. I've added 4 drops of nutmeg to this blend. And the last oil potentially is bergamot. I love bergamot. I use it a lot. It's another one that is both soothing and invigorating. It can calm tension and anxiety and kind of create more ease in the body, but it also is moving and invigorating and can support feelings of hope. And this is kind of like a woody oil, a wood element oil. So as we move closer to spring, our wood season, bergamot is going to be really, really helpful for helping kind of get us up and going and help us move with the massive momentum coming, but in a grounded, easy, kind of flowy kind of way. So I felt that was important to kind of harmonize this blend. Something that I added just for myself here, but I thought I'd share. You don't have to add this to this blend. I added, and I don't think I said, I did 3 drops of bergamot in this blend. So I added vetiver that I added for myself because I have both yin and yang imbalances in my water element. I tend to lean more in the yin deficient kind of way. So again, that's kind of that hyperactive, hyperreactive. Specifically, I'm talking about like autoimmunity and the hyperreactivity or hypervigilance that our immune systems can have with autoimmunity. When you have that kind of hyperreactive patterning, it's a yin deficient thing. And if any oil is yin nourishing, it is vetiver. It is liquid yin. It's very viscous and thick. You might want to put it under your armpit for a few minutes before you try to drop it into your blend because it is very thick and it is very cloying. So if you tend to have, plenty of yang deficient kind of collapse symptoms, you don't want to use a whole bunch of this. I've just added 2 drops to this blend. But again, it kind of soothes and regulates. It really actually kind of modulates that hyperreactive response within ourselves. So I added that here. I thought it was a beautiful addition to my Shui Love, my Water Love oily blend. And I just have it here in a 10 milliliter roller bottle. And I've topped it off. I mean, those little drops of these products, it's not going to fill this up. So I topped it off with jojoba oil as a carrier. I love jojoba as a carrier, but you could use fractionated coconut oil. You could use whatever you want. Sometimes I use apricot kernel oil a lot in topical products, but this is a topical blend. We want to use it topically. I guess you could make it into a spray. I think it would be dreamy in a spray, but for the purpose of activating bladder 60, Kunlun Mountain, and putting it on the bottoms of our feet and our low backs and low abdomens over that lower DanTian area that we connected with earlier, I think it's dreamy as a topical blend. So that's it for today. It was another doozy. Sorry for the long ones. Not sorry. Just pause them and come back to it. But, again, kind of summarizing everything, take some time to sit with this. This, again, was a big episode. It's full of multifaceted, multidimensional information that is really important and supportive for this entire coming year. So come back to it. Take it in small doses. Notice how your body, mind, and spirit are moving through and interacting with this season. Notice how your body feels, what your body's noticing, what it's liking, what it's not liking, what helps you feel safe, what helps you feel resourced. And make some time for that still presence. Come back to that. Let that be a priority this year. It's going to keep you rooted in who you are and what you are actually doing here. It's so, so important. Listen deeply for that wisdom, that thread of divinity that's weaving itself into, this creation of the new. Make space to be still and present and listen to that deep wisdom. And for now, go stretch, take a walk, take a nap, and go drink some good structured water with your cedar chips. And take some time to thank your water element, your Jing, your essence. Connect with that part of yourself. And until next time, see you soon.